everyone. I'm really excited to share a national treasure with you here today who's changing the paradigm in American medicine and American spirituality. I became aware of Dr. Sethi's work through Substack, and it immediately resonated with my life's journey. And to see this come to fruition really brings a lot of love to my heart. So before we begin and take in this wisdom, this timeless knowledge that's available to all of us, if we could just take a moment to hit the brakes in our mind, close our eyes, and take a few breaths with our highest self. So if you could plant your feet firmly down onto this beautiful planet that's hosting our experience. Begin to engage the muscles of your pelvic floor and allow your spine to lengthen north and south. Drop any tension you might be holding in your shoulders, in your emotional backpack about your past, because everything is going to work out. Allow your heart to expand on your inhale as you relax your eyes and jaw and transcend any uncomfortable event from our past that's impeding our ability to see ourselves fully. Notice the quality of your inhale as you begin to slow it down and what happens in your brain. And as the amygdala tones down and self-awareness arises, begin to notice the information that's stored in your spine, in your abdomen, and allow it to communicate with you. Now, shifting your awareness to the quality of your exhale. First, the physical exhale, engaging the muscles of the belly, your rectus abdominis, your obliques, your transverse abdominis. And if you wish, ride the exhale slightly longer than you normally do. And see if you can become interested in that today. Slow motion inhale, adding depth to the exhale. And let's take a moment and see if we can go beyond words. Well, how are we going to do that? When your inhale is complete, pause for a couple seconds. And when your exhale is complete, pause for a couple seconds. And notice in the absence of words, you're still there fully. There's another layer of intuition, intelligence. So whenever you need to, slow your breath, straighten your spine, plant your feet down, and then add pausing. Hit the pause button and love your life. And when you feel ready to leave the meditation, just let your eyes open, re-engage your environment, and take in this information. It is so valuable to all of us as we transition from the old model to a more updated model of ourselves. Hi, Doctor.
Hi, Ed. It's so great to be with you.
I appreciate you and your work so much. If we could just get like a little backdrop about your journey, if you don't mind, just kind of grounding us in who you are and what you're doing.
Well, I'm an integrative physician. I have been so for the last 26 years. I have been doing complex primary care with marginalized communities, integrative medicine, teaching residents. and doing global trauma work around the world with the Center for Mind Body Medicine as the bulk of my work. I'm also now a researcher at the University of Washington, author, published my first book in 2023 called Joy is My Justice, and am a TEDx speaker and love to connect with patients and groups around what it means to really take steps to have more vibrant health and how to have some power back in your body.
And this is available to all of us, correct?
All of us. Yes.
So if we choose to feel more vibrancy, if we choose to raise our self-awareness, we cannot be denied.
Right. Yeah, and I think I learned this through my patients who have been my greatest teachers, but also through my own life. When I was 9 months pregnant with my third child, I learned something that really shattered every dream I ever had, which was that my second child had a fatal degenerative neuromuscular condition. And it was in that moment that I really realized, or well, I thought I hadn't realized yet, but I thought I could never be happy again. How could a mother with a child who's dying and suffering in front of her um, be happy? He has essentially a child version of ALS. And, I really just thought it was over for me. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to just push through this, I guess, but I'm not going to be, a really connected and vibrant person. And, what I really found in my own journey and with my very deep spiritual work with patients and groups is that, I was right and I was wrong. I was right that I couldn't be that happy again. Happiness is a
Mhm,
cognitive construct, it's
mhm,
an evaluation of how life is going. And often my life is not very happy. But what I was wrong about was that joy is actually different than happiness and it's accessible to me anytime. And my work has really become full circle centered around this idea that, joy is not only accessible and available to all of us, it is actually critical that we access it so that we can claim our full humanity back from either the suffering or the oppression that had taken it away to begin with. And so, that really crystallized a lot of my work.
Well, that is so well said. And thank you for sharing that because that's a lot. When we think about happiness, we're thinking about, we have to do something, and when we think about joy, it's like we're just being us. Like we don't have to do anything to feel joy. It's already on board.
Yeah. And, I think what people really don't understand is that joy is accessible without denying the pain. And actually, the
Yeah.
more we acknowledge and
Wow.
accept our pain, the more joy have the capacity for. So, joy runs in the same deep well as our pain. It's that capacity for meaning and love and connection. And actually, it's the exact opposite of contrived or toxic
Mhm,
positivity.
mhm,
We're not denying that our lives are hard. We're not denying that the world is hard. We're not denying that we're scared or that
mhm.
we're anxious or sad. What we're saying is we feel all of that. We see and hold that pain. And, and a big and, I also have the capacity as a human for the full continuum of my experience. And so I can hold beauty and wonder and
Mm.
awe in the same day, even sometimes the same moment. I
Wow.
have such awe and gratitude for my son, but he's also the source of much of my pain, right?
Mhm,
And so, when people ask me, I often am asked by patients and people I teach now, the world has feels like it just gets harder and harder, to be quite honest, for anyone, no matter what your beliefs are. It's just been very difficult for everyone. And
mhm.
people will say, there is no way. How can I find joy? Or how is it possible? And, what I would say is it's not asking how is it possible, it's asking how can I meet what is already there and
Yeah,
that
yeah.
this world or my life tried to erase.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you.
Mm.
I look at your work and I see the great seva, the great service as a physician, as a trained professional, the love that you bring to all levels of society. That is just such an amazing offering of your time and energy. And
Thank you.
some of the greatest self-satisfaction I've ever been involved with in my life is working with the lowest levels of our social economic uh, race, or whatever you'd see in our society, the less fortunate. And I was most fortunate to meet these people and feel their spirit and soul. And I could just go on forever about that, but I just think like service is like the greatest thing that we can do for ourselves, let alone others.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you use the word seva, which comes from my tradition actually. And, it's a word that means a lot to me.
Mhm.
And, when I teach residents, I actually teach them a workshop every year on healing the healer. And when I ask them, why are you here? Why do you want to do this work? Because I work with physicians who are dedicated to marginalized communities, to health equity, to justice. And they often start with to their external way of wanting to help others. And what I really work with them to see is that they're here to heal themselves, and that, there's some wound within them that brought them here to serve others. And if we can see that, if we can feel that on a regular basis, then this idea of burnout is much more elusive,
Mhm.
because what we realize is that all of our work, quote unquote, all the hard work is actually service
Mhm.
of being human with
Mhm.
other humans, right? It doesn't mean, by the way, that insurance companies don't drag me down, or
Right.
paperwork doesn't irritate me, or, the healthcare system doesn't exhaust me. I don't mean that. But what I mean is that I can reground over and over in my deeper why. And I think that, that's even if you're not in a healing professional or a service role for others, I challenge anyone listening to think about their deeper why for anything they're doing,
Yeah.
because it'll bring you back to why you want to do it, and it will keep you going when inevitably stress and exhaustion will want
Mhm.
you to
Right.
stop.
I've never met anyone who's gone deeper, inside themselves and was disappointed.
Right.
It's like, oh, I went deeper and it was bad in there. It's just so funny. Maybe you can comment on this. I've done a lot of work with physicians and nurses, and it's a very, very stressful environment. It's the sense of you have power, you don't have power. What can I say? What can I say? What can I do? What can I do? One thing I notice in the stress programs that I lead for medical professionals is they can give love, but it's difficult for them to receive love.
Mhm.
Can you is that just an illusion of mine, or is that something that you might see in your practice?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's true not only of medical professionals, to be honest, but of any high achieving, more, what people might call type A or high
Right.
achieving people. I think that it stems from the lack or decreased capacity for self compassion, self love.
Right.
And so, I haven't seen in my work around the world with mind body medicine, I haven't seen someone be able to receive love from others very well when they're not able to receive it from themselves.
Yes.
And so,
So well.
I think that's really at the core of it. There is this sort of implied or not implied, just sort of implicit sense that, we can't be in my profession. I can only speak for my profession, but I see
Right.
it often in others, that we can't be weak. We can't be soft. We have to hold
Right.
ourselves to this high ideal, and we have to keep going because everyone's depending on us. I mean, I personally don't think there's that idea of weak or soft are wrong, I think. But I also think that that fosters a culture in which self-compassion feels frivolous, not able, so I
Right.
think that our culture breeds it more. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, because we have these amazing hard skills and logic that we've been able to cultivate, in our life, and then in the past 10 or 15 years, I've become aware of, soft skills or how we feel about things and how we're interacting with our environment, with the felt sense of what we're doing, seems to be coming more as a supportive tool to evolve our hard skills.
Mm, I agree. I think, I just yesterday, a yoga teacher said this, so it's so apropos, but she said, what if instead of trying so hard today, you try easier?
Right.
And, I think that speaks to your really astute insight that this idea of softness had been considered weak or not good. And I think that what we're realizing is that we are too hardened to the world around us.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things I've noticed through the years when we're working with chronic disease is that it can, not all the time, but most of the time, it can be traced back to a respiratory disorder first, that
Mhm.
our breathing has become disturbed. We're not circulating and alkaline the body like we used to. And then we begin to have this buildup of acidity and inflammation, and we're not transporting. Well, first of all, our exhale muscles become very weak because our mind is constantly racing, and we need that inhale to keep the plane up so there isn't turbulence. Uh, can you comment on, in your own professional and personal awareness, how does our breath play a role in longevity and the health of our cells and vitality in the mind and body?
I mean, Ed, we could talk about this for hours. I think that breath is everything, right? It literally is the first thing we do when we come out and the last thing we do before
Yeah,
we leave.
the
Uh,
bookends.
yeah. And in between, how we breathe impacts how we live. So not only is it the way we circulate life-giving oxygen, it
Hmm.
is also, if you look at Eastern healing systems, of which
Hmm.
Ayurvedic medicine is something that I integrate into my practice. That's East Indian medicine. But,
Wow.
in Ayurveda, we call that prana. We
Hmm.
call that the breath, that literally means life force. And I
Hmm.
think that, often, we don't give it the importance that it deserves. So
Hmm.
I think you're right. There's respiratory disease. It's complex, right? It's
Right.
respiratory reasons can cause dysfunction in breath. Then stress can impact that. The more dysfunctionally we breathe, the more we get stressed, the more, it goes on and
Right.
on. But I think that, we have so much science now beyond what we know about asthma or emphysema or
Hmm.
chronic obstructive lung disease. We have so much science now to show that the way we breathe,
Hmm.
whether we breathe nasally or through our mouth, whether we breathe deeply or shallowly,
Hmm.
this impacts our inflammatory environment. It
Hmm.
impacts the way that our organs are literally given life, right?
Hmm.
It impacts our microbiome. And so, I think that there's nothing more important, right?
Right. So that the breath would naturally lead me to, for a lack of a better term, a gut health. How we digest, eliminate, and assimilate. What are we putting in our body? What is the vibrancy of our microbiome? Can you comment on that, and how much gut health is in your wheelhouse?
Mm, a lot. We do a lot of gut health. If I really think there's so much science now in conventional medicine around gut health, thankfully,
Hmm.
although not every physician understands it. But if you really look at Eastern healing systems, I think they have the best way of explaining it, which is
Hmm.
that sense of adding prana. One of the best things you can do for longevity is to add prana every day through your breath, through the food you eat, through the
Hmm.
way that you, cultivate and support your digestion, etc. There is, direct correlation with your digestion to how fast and slow you're breathing. Are you in a
Hmm.
vagal state or are you
Hmm.
in a sympathetic state? What is your nervous system doing? And what we know is that the nervous system in our gut, the enteric nervous system, has more connections to our brain than from
Hmm.
our brain to our spinal cord. So we are really, you know, when you look at that, I don't know how you can't think that the weight of your breath is not more important, right? I think also that what's really underestimated is the power of the breath to induce different mind states,
Yeah.
right? And so the way it can bring us from simple things like the way you led us through beautifully exhaling a little longer and then noticing the space,
Mm.
that can all, that as simple as that can bring a sense of pause and clarity to our day, right? It also spiritually gives us a sense that, oh, there's a space between those breaths.
Hmm.
There's a moment in which I have a chance to
Yeah.
choose something differently. And then moving on to, I mean, I'm sure you work with this often with people and see it often, but in my experience, different kinds of breath work can induce, really the equivalent of a hallucinogenic psychedelic
Hmm.
state.
Hmm.
And that's just, if you think about it, that's just mind blowing.
Yeah.
Right? That, I've done that myself and I just did it recently again last month. And, I'm always mind blown by how fast I can get into a vision state
Hmm.
or see visions and get messages from just breathing differently and rapidly, So um, the breath is everything.
Yeah. Thank you for that. You know, not all nerves are created equal.
Mm,
Uh, Two of the nerves that I'm most concerned with patients and clients is number one, the phrenic nerve, which is the motor nerve of the diaphragm, and how it intervents with the enteric nervous system, which you just so beautifully brought up, and how that works with the vagus nerve and how
mm,
that intervenes with all of our gastrointestinal organs except for our adrenal glands and how that interacts with our neurochemistry. So we have energy, okay, we're creating energy, but it's relaxed energy. And then we have this amazing exhale and we have this amazing vagus nerve, which is coming down the pike so fast with so much information to keep us healthy. And working these two nerves has a tremendous impact on all of our energy systems and our mindset.
I love that. I love that explanation. I want to come to one of your workshops.
But I look at thoughts and how thoughts are either allowed to pass through or stopped based on how we feel about any particular subject or object or
Mhm,
person, place, or thing. And when we are in uh, a tough moment, we have a tendency to stop breathing. And then as
mhm,
soon as we stop breathing, the brain's like, oh my God, what is going on? Where's the air raid? And the amygdala fires off and, the HPA axis goes and digestion stops. And we're like taking punches. And it's just like the caps off the toothpaste. It's like,
mhm.
just put it back on, my man. Well, you're going to be all right. So getting involved with, if you're stressed and things are moving too fast, slowing things down inside. And if things are going too fast inside, you can use fast diaphragmatic breathing to kickstart the gastric flame again to get our curiosity and creativity going.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Makes all the sense. I think what people really, I think why it's so hard, and I personally will say this for me too, when you describe that state in which we just, stop breathing and everything all of a sudden piles on. I mean, I don't know a human who doesn't experience that.
Right.
But when that happens, I think what people don't understand is that there's a way that our mind and our body are working in concert in that
Mhm.
moment to say, you're not safe. Let's figure this out.
Right.
Let's get you safe. And what we don't understand is that we can actually do that for ourselves by slowing down, like you said. We can give through the vagus nerve a message, a signal to our brain of, you're safe right now, you're okay. You
Right.
may not, even if you are not safe in the greater sense, even if there is some bigger threat or fear that you
Hmm.
have on your mind, right now, in this moment, can you just see that you're okay?
Yeah.
And that really is what you're describing as, if we can do that, then we can really interrupt that, cascade.
Right.
And then the way that you measured, described breath as catalyzing creativity, and that is so true. You'll appreciate this. I used to use on call nights. I was a resident, and then I also
Mhm.
delivered babies for 24 years. And
Wow.
when you're exhausted at 3 in the morning and you're
Right.
not sure how to wake up, I would use chaotic nasal breathing,
Hmm.
actually,
Hmm.
and really use my accessory diaphragmatic muscles there.
Yeah.
And, it would wake me up and get
Wow.
me back in the game, as so to speak. And so, you really, when you understand the breath, you can understand how to support yourself either way.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's wonderful when we begin to awaken that we do play a large role
Hmm.
in our energy and how we're showing up in the moment. So let's start with parents who have kids, like and kids in the formative years. The ego really hasn't developed yet. What are some things that you would recommend for parents to really support that child physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually in developing in the healthiest ways as possible?
Well, this is also, we could do hours on this, but I would
Yeah.
say if I try to think of a couple of important things, what I would say is, one is to really stop trying to fix them.
Hmm.
Acknowledge emotions and acknowledge and listen and try to be more present than a fixer.
Hmm.
So, I think what we do a lot is say, even subtly, you'll be okay. Everything's
Hmm.
okay. Or don't be scared.
Hmm.
And that's, we have good intentions behind that. But what if we just said, I hear you?
Right.
And what if we just said, I'm here? And then what would be helpful for you right now?
Hmm.
Even a 4 or 5, 6, 7-year-old understands that.
Right.
Um, so, this sense that, and I will tell you, with my son that I spoke about earlier,
Yes.
who's still alive and not doing well. He's in a very, hard stage of this disease. But uh, even with him, sure, I can't fix him, right? I have to just learn to be present. But even for my other two children who are right now healthy and able bodied and, more typical in terms of being children, adolescents, young adults, I can't fix them either, Ed. You
Right.
know, they've had very, significant mental health challenges. They've had other challenges, and all I can do is be there and
Hmm.
support them. And so I think this idea of not being a fixer is really important. I also think it's important. What I wish I had gotten when I was little was some support of my internal resources, my own capacity.
Right.
So it would have been really different for me. Now, I had a great childhood, but I'm just saying it would have been really different for me in learning to meet challenges as an adult if I had understood as a child that, not only am I not broken and I don't need to be fixed, but also, what could I do right now? You
Hmm.
know, could I use my own breath? Could I jump up and down? Could I go for a walk? Could I
Right.
use movement? What could I do? And then I would understand more that my internal resources are powerful. And so, those are two things I would think about.
That is so well said. Yeah, one of the things I always tried to do with my daughters was let them make the choice. I mean,
Mhm.
don't go out and play in traffic, don't go crushed by
Right,
the
right.
ocean, but at the end of the day, like, what would you prefer to do right now? What do you want for lunch? and began to shape their mind in a way that what they were choosing was going to have some sort of a consequence or a result. And I'm here if something goes sideways, but at the end of the day, start to choose for yourself. You're intelligent on your own. In fact, you're probably more aware than I am, because I'm kind of in this, kind of adult role, and you're in kind of the child role.
Mhm.
So empowering to choose from the internal world and see, what did I choose and how did it play out?
I love that.
They loved that. And then I gave them a lot of yoga, like therapeutic yoga, not power yoga or
Yeah, yeah,
forcing. It was more or less go into things and feel
mhm.
you. Good
Yeah,
feeling, bad feeling, good thought, bad thought, navigate.
yeah. And I don't know if your kids how old they are, but, there are amazing picture books now for kids that
Really?
I mean, I'm not gonna remember the names now if you ask me, but I have them upstairs on my kids' bookcase. We used to read them constantly. But, really sweet books about not only yoga, but also just, yoga and feeling and emotions and
Hmm.
really sweet books. So, I feel like, I had, more tools to use with my kids than my parents did in that way.
Yeah, the feeling thing is coming around the bend big time, and all of us are feeling are becoming a lot more aware of feeling,
Yeah,
whatever that means to you, ladies and gentlemen. But I know you're feeling more than you have ever felt right now in your life, and you
right.
can't stop it. So you must find a way to navigate the emotional self.
Mhm.
So as kids get a little older and they begin to set up guardrails and boundaries, and they're in their teenage years, they're kind of testing uh, environments of strength, weakness, etc. And there tends to be friction sometimes in the family unit. Do you have any advice, for parents and kids about how to take those like 8 to 10 formative years and not kill each other?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I have a 21-year-old and a 17-year-old, so I'm living that right now. I would say that there's a couple of things that I find really help me. One is this advice I got very early on, which was to be a potted plant.
Mm,
And, what my friend was saying is that when you have teenagers and my kids were much younger at the time, so I really thought she was kind of crazy to say that, but then it stuck with me and it is true. She said, when you have teenagers, it's important that you root yourself, ground yourself, know
mhm.
how to reground yourself
Right.
often, and you are like a potted plant in the room. You're there for support, you're there for presence, but you need to give them their own space.
Yeah.
And that has really helped me. And not only
Beautiful.
that, I also, I have really, when my daughter's testing her boundaries, same like you, we give a lot of choices, but we have certain things we say no
Mm,
to, right?
mhm,
And she's not happy about that. And so, I'm just very clear with her that, my job is not to be your best friend.
mhm,
Um, I'm not here to be your best friend. I'm here to be as supportive, present, and caring as I can be, and to
mhm,
just make sure that things are as safe as possible. And I also
mhm.
tell her I can't prevent everything, but my
Right.
job is to try to do what I can do. And so this one feels hard to me. We're going to say no to
Right.
this one, right?
Right.
And those really help me. I think the not being a fixer is huge in these teenage and young adult years. And then when my 21-year-old went to college, that's my oldest first child in college. I said to him, we sat down and we had a talk, and I said, I'm always going to be your mother, and
Mhm,
I love you and I'm here for you, but I'm not your parent anymore.
mhm.
I'm now like a coach.
Right.
And so if you need advice or you need questions to process through, I am here for you in a nanosecond.
Mhm,
I'm not going to unsolicitedly give you, a way to do things. I am here. I love you. I will be here anytime, but I'm not going to, be there for everything now. And so you have to figure things out too. And that has really helped us just sort of navigate a new relationship. And
Hmm.
so, there's things he's done that I don't agree with. And
Hmm.
also, they're not dangerous things that are killing him, or,
Hmm.
he's so, I guess he'll figure it out.
Yeah, it seems like it's challenging our ability to stay in love with the process, of life. Once
Oh,
we leave the
yeah.
teenage years, we get into our 20s, then our children begin to realize, hey, mom and dad are not gods.
Right.
They are just as challenged as we are, and they're doing the best they can. And hopefully that's what comes to the family unit. There's kind of like this equalization of like the
Right.
hierarchy where we're
Right.
all in this together as a unit. We're a tribe.
You remind me of, there was something that we were saying no to we rarely have to say no to her, but we were saying no to this one thing. And my husband said to my daughter, he said, "Look, this is the first time I've navigated this.
Hmm.
You got
Right.
to give me some grace. Like, this doesn't feel right to me.
Hmm.
Maybe it'll change, maybe not. But right now, this is what I'm deciding, and I'm trying to do my best."
Yeah.
And, I thought that was really, a great thing to say. Just kinda like, "We're trying this out. We don't know what we're
Right.
doing."
It's funny how life sometimes just calls us to just fall on our sword. Like, I don't have all this figured out either.
Right.
This is ongoing. This is life. There's only so much predictability. Sometimes just getting out of bed on a difficult morning is the most courageous thing you can do and get vertical. And I honor you for that.
Exactly.
It's the
Exactly.
little victories. It's not the big hills. It's the little hills that we all climb regularly, but we don't give ourselves credit for.
Right. Right.
So as you see clients start to reach their 30s and 50s these days, you're starting to see the diseases that you used to see from 50 to 70. Can you comment a little on that and how we might be able to push back on that model a little bit biologically?
Yeah. There is definitely, a just more inflammatory lifestyle that we
Yes.
lead. That's not only stress, that's also, the toxins in the air, the pollutants, pesticides in the food, more processed food, more food that is, uh, you know, frankly, I just can't even recognize what these foods are.
Right.
And we just have a lot more modern day onslaught of attention stress, right?
Mhm.
So there's our phones are going off all the time. Even when I was in residency, I feel so old saying this, but just when I was in residency, there weren't any cell phones. And so, I had a pager, but I wasn't onslaught by this, device in my hand all the
Right.
time. And so there's a lot. We're indoors more. We're more sedentary. All of these things. So we see rates of increase of cancer, of heart disease, of
Mhm.
depression, anxiety. So many epidemics of inflammation that we're facing. The way to push back really is so simple, Ed, but it's not
Mhm.
easy.
Right. Right.
But it is so simple. I don't have any great, surprising wisdom for you. It is simple. It
No, that
is,
was wisdom.
well, it's simple in that, like, can you eat more foods that you recognize? Can
Right.
you cook more at home? It's also cheaper. It's less
Right.
financial stress. Can you, even if you can't buy organic vegetables, can you just eat more vegetables? Can you actually learn how to breathe better and deeper? Right? Can you nasally breathe when you're sleeping, for
Mhm.
instance, or
Right.
in the day? Can you move your body more? I mean, we know, Ed, that people who walk
Mhm.
8,000 steps a day
Mhm.
have almost, well, more than 50% chance of dying, less chance, sorry,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
dying from anything. I mean,
Yeah.
that's an astounding thing. It starts going up at 5,000 steps. We see a really big spike at 8,000. So I'm saying even 5,000. How about just walking more than you did yesterday? So,
Yeah.
what are the ways that we can do more of what you did at the beginning of this talk of breathing and pausing. I, for one, am feeling more and more like my nervous system needs more and more and
Mm.
more tending to.
Yeah.
So, the ways to push back are really, in my opinion, the ways of becoming more human and bringing life into its more simpler form.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not easy. I really mean that. I don't think that these things are so easy. There's lots of obstacles, both financial and socioeconomic and cultural and many more.
Yeah.
Your boss expects things from you, all kinds of reasons that it's not easy, but it is simple.
Yeah. One of the secret hacks is taking less breaths per minute, getting
Mhm.
the air into the lower lobes of the lungs, supporting a straight spine, being alert in your mind. And when you think about less breaths per minute, you're going to have a lower heart rate.
Yeah,
And if you have a lower heart rate, chances are you can push heart disease way down the line.
yeah,
If you're taking less breaths per minute and you have healthy blood pressure, chances are you're going to oxygenate your cells in your organs and you're not going to get cancer.
yeah.
So there's like all sorts. I mean,
Yeah,
well,
and I mean, you really, start but you don't even need to get fancy. Start by just exhaling longer. Then
exactly.
you're
You
getting
have
to
to
this
want to exhale longer.
right.
There isn't a client who I've worked with in all of my years who does not start with weak exhale muscles.
Yeah,
The, our expiratory muscles have become weak due to the overstimulation of the neural systems and the higher heart rates and the emotional exuberance. And just getting control. Here's the secret. If you get control of your breath, what you're really getting is control of your mind.
oh, I like that.
So if you can control your physiology, you have a much greater command over the show you're watching between your ears, your psychology.
I
So
love that.
let's go a little bigger. So everybody has a responsibility. You've been given this body, you have this uniform, you're here on earth, and it's an inside job. Like whatever's going to happen outside, some of it's great, some of it's not great. So we have at the time of this recording, we have a new HHS secretary who is going to look into some of the procedures that have been ongoing, unchecked for a while now. So this is an external thing. I think it's fantastic, but we still have a responsibility ourselves to get ourselves, healthy. So what do you think is some of the things that might come to the forefront over the next couple years that are really going to help humanity in America get a little better grip on ourselves?
Well, that's a big one, Ed. Yeah, I'm frankly a little worried about that.
Hmm.
I'm worried about it. I'm worried that this new person, in my opinion, doesn't really understand how to evaluate scientific research
Hmm.
or the value of it, and I'm worried about it.
Hmm.
That being said, I think that when we get to what I would call a crisis point right now with health in America and with this new person in charge of that, what I would say is that when we get to crisis, often the collective comes together to think
Right.
of ways to meet the crisis that maybe we hadn't thought of before. And so my hope is that we build something even better. But
Hmm.
but right now, I think yeah, I'm concerned. Yeah, I am concerned. But my hope always is that the community comes together to make sure that, science prevails, to make sure that people are given what
Hmm.
they need access to. So, hope always is true and there, and that's what I'm holding.
That's so well said. And so skilled. You're such a good wordsmith.
Mm.
Very efficient. So as we wrap up here today, first of all, thank you so much for your service, your wisdom, your spirit, everything that you bring to everyone in your life. It just must be to be in the room with you must be so magnetic.
Oh, thank you.
It's just
Generous.
such a heartfelt expression of the human. Is there anything that you could leave with our folks here today that is in the foreground of your mind that might be helpful?
Hmm. I think, given that we've talked about this a little bit, what kind of epidemic of stress we're living
Mhm,
under right now and how hard the world is, I would really leave everyone with this sense that the more overwhelmed you feel, the
mhm,
more anxious you feel, the more that's a message that it's time to think about what's one small step you could do
mhm,
today to get some pause and slow down. Because what people feel when we're overwhelmed is we're not sure what to do about it, right?
mhm,
And the best way to clarity is to soothe that vagus nerve,
mhm,
is to give it some breath, to give it some pause, to give it some sense of compassion, which
mhm,
also signals safety. Whatever it is for you, if it's good music and dancing, if it's taking a walk, if it's putting soil in your hands
mhm.
in your garden, find what it is and do it just once today.
Yes.
Just start there. The overwhelm happens because we're so muddled in our mind, right? And
Mhm.
so we need to get clarity. And sometimes we think that's some big thing we need to do. And I would say start small.
Yeah. Baby steps.
Yeah.
We all can do it. So in the show notes, you guys are all going to see ways to get a hold of the doctor, and you can see her online wherever you may be in the world, I believe,
Yeah.
and you can get healthy real fast.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate your service to yourself and humanity.
Oh, thank you, Ed. It was really wonderful to be with you.
I appreciate you.